The first gunshot echoed through the hallway just seconds after the morning bell rang. Children froze. Teachers screamed. Within moments, four masked gunmen stormed the front office of Lincoln Elementary School, dragging a bleeding man behind them. They weren't there to rob the school, they were running from something far more dangerous. Every exit was chained shut. Every classroom became a prison. More than 300 children and staff were trapped inside with desperate criminals who had already proven they would kill to escape. Outside, police surrounded the building within minutes. SWAT teams took positions on nearby rooftops while terrified parents gathered behind barricades, watching helplessly as news helicopters circled overhead. The gang leader demanded a helicopter, millions of dollars, and a clear escape route. If anyone tried to enter the building, he promised the first victims would be children. Inside, panic spread like wildfire. Teachers struggled to calm crying students while the criminals searched every room for phones and radios. One of the gunmen suddenly collapsed after losing too much blood from a gunshot wound suffered during the getaway. His breathing became weak, and blood soaked through his jacket faster than anyone could stop it. "There has to be a medic!" the gang leader shouted. A frightened teacher slowly pointed toward the school's quiet new nurse. Emily Carter stepped forward without saying a word. She didn't shake. She didn't panic. She simply knelt beside the wounded criminal and calmly examined the injury. Using nothing more than supplies from a small school medical kit, she controlled the bleeding with movements so fast and precise that even the armed men stopped talking. Every motion was confident. Every decision was exact. It wasn't the work of an ordinary school nurse. It looked like someone who had treated soldiers under enemy fire. The injured gunman stared at her in disbelief. His breathing steadied. His pulse returned. Then, barely able to speak, he looked at his leader and whispered, "Boss, I've seen those techniques before." The leader frowned. "Where?" The wounded man swallowed hard. "In the military." The room fell silent. The gang leader looked back at the quiet nurse standing before him. To everyone else, she was just the woman who handed out ice packs, checked fevers, and comforted frightened children. But he had just made the worst mistake of his life. Because the woman standing inside that school wasn't simply a nurse. She was a former Navy SEAL combat medic, and hostage rescue had once been her job. The morning sun had barely climbed above the rooftops of Lincoln when yellow school buses began pulling into the circular driveway of Lincoln Elementary School. Children laughed as they hurried toward the entrance with oversized backpacks bouncing behind them. Parents waved goodbye. Teachers greeted students by name, and the familiar sound of the morning bell echoed across the campus. To everyone else, it was just another ordinary Tuesday. For Emily Carter, it was only her third week as the school's new nurse. Most teachers knew very little about her. She was polite, dependable, and unusually quiet. She never stayed long after work, never joined staff gossip, and politely declined every invitation to lunch. When people asked about her previous job, she simply smiled and said she had worked in emergency medicine for several years before deciding she wanted a quieter life. No one questioned the answer. The principal, Robert Hayes, often joked that Emily was the calmest employee he had ever hired. Even during playground accidents or allergic reactions, she never appeared rushed. She moved with quiet confidence, speaking gently to frightened children while solving every medical emergency without raising her voice. Many assumed she had simply seen enough hospital chaos to remain calm. None of them imagined that hospitals were actually the least dangerous places she had ever worked. Inside the small medical office, Emily organized medications, checked emergency oxygen supplies, inspected trauma kits, and quietly replaced expired bandages. Her routine was almost military in its precision. Every drawer remained perfectly arranged. Every piece of equipment sat exactly where her hands expected to find it. Habit. Years of habit. She glanced at the framed photographs decorating the office walls. Smiling children. School events. Sports teams. Peace. Exactly the kind of place she had promised herself she would never leave again. Just before 10 o'clock, the secretary called over the intercom. "Emily, could you come to the front office?" One of the kindergarten students has a bloody nose. I'll be right there. She grabbed a small medical pouch and walked calmly through the hallway, smiling at students passing between classrooms. Halfway to the office, she heard something unusual. Not screaming. Not shouting. Engines. Multiple engines. They stopped abruptly outside the main entrance. Emily instinctively looked toward the front windows. A black SUV skidded sideways across the parking lot. Another pickup truck slammed into the security gate. The school's security officer barely had time to react. Four masked men jumped out carrying rifles. The first gunshot shattered the morning silence. Glass exploded across the front office. Children screamed. Teachers froze. The security officer reached for his radio but collapsed before he could press the emergency button. Within seconds, the gunmen forced their way inside, dragging another man whose shirt was soaked with blood. The wounded man stumbled across the lobby, leaving a trail of crimson footprints behind him. "Everyone on the floor!" one of the gunmen shouted. His voice echoed through the building. Teachers immediately shielded nearby children. Some students cried. Others stood frozen in confusion. Emily didn't move. Her eyes swept across the room. 4 gunmen. Military-style rifles. 1 shotgun. Body armor. Extra magazines. Professional communication earpieces. Not amateurs. The gang leader pointed his rifle toward the receptionist. "Lock every door." Another criminal rushed through the hallways, chaining emergency exits from the inside. Within less than 2 minutes, Lincoln Elementary School had become a fortress. Outside, police sirens could already be heard approaching. The wounded gunman suddenly collapsed onto one knee. Blood poured through his fingers. "I can't stop it," he gasped. The leader cursed loudly. "We need a medic!" No one answered. Teachers looked at one another in terrified silence. Finally, the principal slowly pointed toward Emily. "Our school nurse." The gang leader aimed his rifle directly at her. "You!" Emily quietly stepped forward. "Save him!" She knelt beside the wounded man without saying a word. Ignoring the rifles pointed at her, she gently removed his blood-soaked jacket. The injury immediately caught her attention. Entry wound. No exit wound. Heavy arterial bleeding. The bullet had narrowly missed his femoral artery. He had minutes left. Emily opened her small medical pouch. Inside were nothing more than basic school supplies. Gauze. Scissors. Bandages. Medical tape. Most people would have panicked. Emily never even took a deep breath. Her hands moved automatically. Pressure. Packing. Compression. Assessment. She asked short, direct questions. "When were you shot?" 20, maybe 25 minutes. "Any allergies?" "No." She nodded once. Without hesitation, she improvised a pressure dressing using multiple layers of gauze and tightly wrapped elastic bandages. Then she adjusted the wounded man's leg to reduce blood loss while constantly checking his pulse. The room watched in complete silence. Even the children had stopped crying. The injured criminal stared at her. "You've done this before." Emily kept working. "I've treated worse." Those 4 quiet words sent an uncomfortable silence through the room. The gang leader frowned. "What hospital teaches that?" Emily didn't answer. She simply finished securing the dressing before calmly helping the man sit upright. His breathing slowed. His pulse stabilized. The color slowly returned to his face. One of the younger gunmen stared in disbelief. "Boss! What? That wasn't normal." The leader looked irritated. "What are you talking about? I served 2 years in the Marines before prison." His eyes never left Emily. "I've seen combat medics work." He swallowed hard. "She moves exactly like one." The hallway suddenly felt much quieter. Every criminal looked toward Emily. She slowly stood, removed her blood-stained gloves, and calmly placed them into a trash bin. "I've stopped the bleeding," she said. "He needs surgery within the next few hours if you want him to keep his leg." The gang leader stepped closer. "So, He lowered his rifle only slightly. "Who exactly are you?" Emily met his eyes without fear. "I'm the school nurse." For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Outside, the first police vehicle screeched to a stop around the school. Red and blue lights flashed through the front windows. The hostage crisis had officially begun. As officers established a perimeter outside, the wounded gunman leaned toward his leader and whispered just loudly enough for Emily to hear. "Boss, I know that technique." The leader looked down. "From where?" The wounded man swallowed. "I saw it once, overseas." His eyes slowly lifted toward Emily. "Military." The gang leader looked back at the quiet nurse standing only a few feet away. For the first time since entering the school, he wasn't completely sure who his hostage really was. The flashing red and blue lights outside the school grew brighter with every passing minute. Police cruisers blocked every road leading to Lincoln Elementary. SWAT officers crouched behind armored vehicles while snipers quietly took positions on nearby rooftops. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live images across the country. Parents cried behind police barricades, desperately searching classroom windows for any sign that their children were still alive. Inside the school, however, time seemed to move differently. The silence was almost unbearable. Children sat against classroom walls with their teachers, trying not to cry. Every loud sound caused dozens of frightened eyes to jump toward the hallway. The gunman paced constantly, rifles ready, growing more nervous as police loudspeakers demanded negotiations. Emily Carter calmly walked back into the nurse's office after checking the wounded criminal one more time. His condition had stabilized. For now. The gang leader followed her inside, closing the door behind him. His rifle never left her. "I don't believe you," he said quietly. Emily continued organizing bandages. "I didn't ask you to. You stopped a man from bleeding out with almost nothing. I've worked in emergency medicine." He stepped closer. "No." His eyes narrowed. "Emergency room nurses panic under pressure. You didn't." Emily finally looked at him. "What exactly do you think I am?" The leader smiled. "I haven't figured that out yet." For several seconds neither of them spoke. Then a voice shouted from the hallway. "Boss!" The leader stepped outside. One of his men had found Emily's employee file inside the principal's office. He flipped through the papers. "Emily Carter. Age 36. Former trauma nurse." He frowned. "That's all it says?" The leader grabbed the file and read every page. Nothing. No family. No emergency contacts. No social media. No previous addresses beyond a military town in Virginia. Almost too clean. He slowly folded the papers. "She's hiding something." Meanwhile, Emily quietly continued treating frightened children who suffered panic attacks or minor injuries. She comforted a little boy with asthma, checked another student's sprained wrist, helped a teacher whose blood pressure was rising dangerously from stress. Every child she touched seemed to become calmer. Even the criminals noticed. One young gunman whispered to another, "She's not scared." "No. It's like she's waiting." Across the hallway, police negotiators finally established radio contact. A loudspeaker echoed through the school. "This is Captain Harris with the Lincoln Police Department. We want everyone to go home safely." The gang leader walked toward a classroom window. "I want $20 million. A helicopter. And safe passage. If I see one officer inside this building." He looked toward a classroom filled with terrified second graders. "Children start dying." Outside, Captain Harris lowered the radio. He had handled hostage situations before. But something about this one felt different. Inside the school, Emily quietly studied every criminal whenever they weren't looking. She noticed details that nobody else seemed to see. The oldest man limped slightly. Old knee injury. The youngest constantly checked the windows. Nervous. Likely inexperienced. The man guarding the cafeteria carried his rifle incorrectly. Little formal training. The leader, however, different. Every movement was controlled. Disciplined. Professional. He scanned corners before entering rooms. Never exposed himself near windows. Always positioned armed men to create overlapping fields of fire. Whoever he was, he had military experience. Emily memorized everything. Weapons. Ammunition. Escape routes. Blind corners. Security cameras. Locked doors. She wasn't planning an escape. Not yet. She was building a map. A habit from another life. As she walked into classroom 12, one frightened little girl slowly tugged on her sleeve. The child couldn't have been older than 9. Miss Carter? Emily knelt beside her. Yes? I know you. Emily smiled gently. I don't think we've met before. The little girl shook her head. My dad showed me a newspaper once. Emily's smile disappeared. You look different. Wearing green clothes. There were soldiers. Emily remained perfectly still. My dad said you saved lots of people? The girl whispered even more quietly. Weren't you in the Navy? Before Emily could answer, another child began crying. She gently squeezed the girl's hand. We'll talk later. Then she walked away. But her heartbeat had changed. Someone had recognized her. Only for a moment. Memories returned. Afghanistan. Dust storms. Helicopter blades. Night vision. Explosions. Blood. The cries of wounded teammates. Years earlier, Emily Carter had served as one of the Navy's most respected combat medics, attached to an elite Special Operations Rescue Unit. Her missions were classified, her records sealed, and her successes known only to the soldiers whose lives she saved. She had treated gunshot wounds while helicopters crashed around her, performed surgery inside damaged buildings, dragged wounded operators through enemy fire. Then came one mission she couldn't forget. A hostage rescue. Everything went wrong. An intelligence leak. An ambush. Most of her team never came home. Emily survived. She carried that weight every single day afterward. Eventually she resigned from military service. She wanted silence. Children. Normal life. A place where nobody carried rifles. But danger had somehow found her again. Back in the present, the wounded criminal suddenly called for his leader. Boss. I remember now. The room grew quiet. I've seen her before. The leader frowned. Where? Not her face. The way she works. He pointed toward Emily. Only military rescue medics move like that. The leader slowly turned. So? He walked toward Emily once again. You really expect me to believe you're just a school nurse? Emily looked directly into his eyes. I am a school nurse. Today. The single word caught him off guard. Today. Not always. Not before. Today. Before he could ask another question, another criminal rushed down the hallway. Boss! We've got another problem. What now? The man held up a black metal case taken from their escape vehicle. It won't unlock. The leader immediately grabbed it. His expression changed. This case doesn't leave my hands. Emily noticed the panic in his voice. That wasn't money. It wasn't jewelry either. Whatever was inside. People were willing to kill for it. She watched carefully as he checked the digital lock. Military-grade encryption. Not something ordinary bank robbers would steal. This wasn't simply a robbery gone wrong. It was something much larger. Something organized. Something dangerous. Outside, the police still believed they were negotiating with desperate fugitives. Emily now understood the truth. These men weren't running from the police. They were running from whoever originally owned that case. And if those people arrived before law enforcement ended the hostage crisis, everyone inside the school, including hundreds of innocent children, would become expendable. Emily quietly glanced at the old waterproof watch hidden beneath her sleeve. A gift from her final deployment. She slowly rotated the bezel exactly 3 clicks. Nothing happened. At least, nothing visible. Nearly 200 miles away, Inside a Federal Intelligence Operations Center, a secure monitoring console suddenly lit up. A forgotten emergency beacon had just activated for the first time in 6 years. One analyst stared at the blinking signal. His face immediately turned pale. He reached for the secure phone. "We've got an active emergency transmission." The supervisor looked up. "Source?" The analyst swallowed hard. "Former Navy SEAL combat medic." He read the encrypted identification code. "Emily Carter." The room fell completely silent. The emergency beacon transmitted only one encrypted message. "Operator alive. Hostage situation. Immediate response required." Hundreds of miles away, inside a secure Naval Special Operations Center, alarms echoed through the intelligence room. Commander Ethan Brooks stared at the blinking screen in disbelief. Emily Carter. He hadn't heard that name in nearly 6 years. Most people believed she had disappeared after resigning from the Navy. Only a handful of people knew the truth. She hadn't quit because she was weak. She had quit because she blamed herself for the deaths of her rescue team during Operation Black Tide. Brooks immediately picked up a classified phone. "Get Homeland Security. Notify the FBI. And patch me through to Lincoln Police." Within minutes, armored federal vehicles began arriving outside Lincoln Elementary School. Captain Harris watched several black SUVs stop behind the police barricades. Men wearing tactical jackets stepped out carrying encrypted communication equipment. One of them approached Harris. "I'm Special Agent Daniel Ross. We're taking operational control." Harris frowned. "On whose authority?" Ross handed him a classified authorization. "The highest authority you'll ever need." Inside the school, the atmosphere was becoming more dangerous. The gang leader paced nervously. His satellite phone had rung twice. He ignored both calls. Whatever organization they had stolen from clearly wanted something back. Emily noticed his hands beginning to shake. Fear changed people. Desperate people made mistakes. She quietly continued checking on the children. A frightened teacher whispered, "Can they save us?" Emily smiled gently. "Yes." "How do you know?" "Because they're running out of time." The teacher looked confused. Only Emily understood what she meant. The criminals weren't simply surrounded by police anymore. They were surrounded by people who knew exactly who she was. Near the cafeteria, Emily approached the youngest gunman. His name, she had learned, was Tyler. He couldn't have been older than 23. His hands shook every time he held his rifle. He avoided looking at the children. He wasn't a killer. He was scared. Emily handed him a bottle of water. "You should drink." He stared at her. "Why are you helping me? You've been standing for hours." He hesitated before taking it. "My little brother," he quietly admitted. "He's about the same age as these kids." Emily nodded. "You still have choices." Before Tyler could answer, the gang leader called everyone together. "We're moving." The criminals began gathering hostages into the school gymnasium. Large open space. Fewer exits. Better control. Emily immediately understood the tactic. While helping children walk toward the gym, she quietly studied every hallway. Fire alarms. Electrical panels. Sprinkler controls. Storage closets. Science classrooms. Everything could become useful. Inside the gymnasium, nearly 300 frightened students and teachers sat together. The gang leader stood on the stage. "No heroes. No screaming. If police come inside." He aimed his rifle toward the crowd. "You know what happens." Silence answered him. Meanwhile, outside the building, Special Agent Ross received new intelligence. "The black case. It's not cash." "What is it?" "A military-grade encrypted drive." Ross looked shocked. "What's on it?" "We don't know. But 3 foreign intelligence groups are already trying to recover it." Ross slowly lowered the report. "This just became international." Back inside, Emily noticed Tyler watching the children again. She quietly walked beside him. "You're not like the others." He looked away. You don't know anything about me. I know you haven't pointed your rifle at a single child. He remained silent. You don't want anyone to die, Tyler whispered. No. Emily leaned closer. Then help me. He looked at her in confusion. How? Move the youngest children to the nurse's office. They're frightened. It'll keep them calmer. Tyler hesitated. Then he nodded. A few minutes later he convinced the gang leader that frightened children were becoming difficult to control. Surprisingly, the leader agreed. Nearly 20 younger students were moved into the medical office. Exactly where Emily wanted them. While comforting the children, Emily quietly searched cabinets. Alcohol. Medical tubing. Flashlights. Scissors. Batteries. Tape. Cleaning chemicals. Nothing looked dangerous. To Emily, everything had a purpose. She wasn't building weapons. She was building opportunities. Suddenly, one of the older criminals entered the office. He watched Emily carefully. Something on her wrist caught his attention. What is that? Emily instinctively covered her watch. The man grabbed her arm. The old military watch slipped beneath her sleeve. Attached to the band was a tiny metal trident engraved into the steel. The Navy SEAL insignia. His eyes widened. Boss! The room instantly fell silent. The gang leader entered. What? The criminal pointed toward Emily. Look! The leader grabbed her wrist. His expression slowly changed. I knew it. He looked directly into her eyes. You lied. Emily calmly answered. I never lied. You asked if I was the school nurse? I am. Today. The leader's smile disappeared. What were you before? Emily remained silent. One of the wounded criminals suddenly spoke. I told you. Military. The leader stepped closer. What branch? Emily didn't answer. He pressed the cold barrel of his pistol against her forehead. I asked you a question? Several terrified children began crying. Emily never looked away. Finally she spoke. I was a combat medic. The leader laughed. Army? Emily slowly shook her head. Navy. Every criminal exchanged nervous looks. Even Tyler took a step backward. The wounded man whispered. Boss, we should leave. The leader ignored him. Instead, he smiled. You know, I've always wondered something. Can a medic fight? Emily looked directly at him. When they have to. The leader's smile vanished. He pointed toward two armed men. Tie her up. The first man reached for Emily's shoulder. Before his fingers even touched her, everything exploded into motion. Emily trapped his wrist. Twisted his elbow. The rifle hit the floor. She struck his throat with a lightning-fast elbow. Before the second criminal reacted, she kicked the rifle away and slammed him into the wall. The entire room froze. Teachers stared in disbelief. Children gasped. Even the gang leader needed nearly 2 seconds to understand what had happened. She's trained! He shouted. Gunfire erupted. Emily grabbed 2 frightened children and rolled behind heavy filing cabinets as bullets ripped through the medical office walls. Glass shattered. Medical supplies exploded across the floor. Smoke filled the hallway. Emily quietly pushed the children toward a storage closet. Stay here. No matter what happens. Don't come out until someone wearing a police uniform opens this door. The children nodded through tears. Outside the office, chaos spread throughout the school. The gang leader screamed orders. Find her. Kill her. No mistakes. Emily slipped silently into the empty hallway. Every movement was controlled. Every breath measured. She wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. Outside, SWAT officers heard the gunfire echo through the building. Special Agent Ross looked toward Commander Brooks. Brooks spoke only 4 words. She started the rescue. Ross immediately raised his radio. All tactical teams. Stand by. Inside the school, Emily disappeared into the maze of hallways. The hunters believed they were chasing one unarmed school nurse. They had no idea they had just declared war on one of the Navy's most experienced combat medics. And Emily Carter had already decided that every single child in that school was going home alive. Gunfire echoed through the empty hallways as armed criminals searched every classroom, storage room, and office. The gang leader had only one order: find her. Kill her. Emily Carter moved silently through the ventilation corridors that connected the older section of the school. Years of special operations training had taught her a simple rule: never fight the enemy where they expect you. She listened. Footsteps. Radio chatter. Panicked breathing. The criminals had lost their discipline. Fear had replaced confidence. Outside, the FBI command vehicle had become the center of the operation. Commander Ethan Brooks stood over a blueprint of the school. Special Agent Daniel Ross looked toward him. "We're running out of time." Brooks nodded. "They know who she is now." Ross looked confused. "Should we go in?" Brooks answered without hesitation. "No." Ross stared at him. "Why not?" "Because if Emily hasn't signaled an assault, it means innocent children are still in the line of fire." At that moment, every tactical operator understood something remarkable. The rescue operation wasn't being led from outside. It was being led by a former Navy SEAL combat medic trapped inside the building. Back inside the school, the gang leader unlocked the black encrypted case. Inside was not money. Not diamonds. Not drugs. Instead, it contained a hardened military data drive marked with a red warning label. Classified. Several pages of encrypted documents lay beneath it. One criminal looked confused. "We almost died for this." The leader nodded. "You have no idea what's on this drive." "What is it?" "The highest bidder is offering $50 million. Before anyone could speak again, a loud explosion echoed from the opposite side of the building. Every criminal turned toward the sound. Emily had triggered the school's fire suppression system. Water poured from ceiling sprinklers throughout the main hallway. Emergency lights began flashing. Smoke alarms screamed. The building instantly became a maze of flashing red lights, pouring water, and thick confusion. The gang leader shouted orders. "Spread out! Find her!" It was exactly what Emily wanted. Separated enemies were easier to defeat. The first criminal rounded a corner. Emily pulled him into a dark classroom before he could react. One quick strike. One chokehold. He collapsed unconscious. She unloaded his weapon and secured him with electrical cords from classroom computers. No unnecessary violence. Only enough force to stop him. A second criminal entered the flooded hallway. He slipped on the wet floor. Emily kicked his rifle away before helping him crash into a row of lockers. Seconds later, he was unconscious too. Outside, Commander Brooks smiled. "They're losing men." Ross looked surprised. "How can you tell?" "Because the gunfire stopped. They're searching. She's hunting." Inside the gymnasium, Tyler struggled to keep frightened children calm. He looked toward the leader. "We should surrender." The leader turned angrily. "You've gone soft. They're kids. They've done nothing." The leader raised his pistol. "You've forgotten why we're here." Without warning, he fired. The bullet barely missed Tyler's shoulder. The young criminal fell backward in shock. At that moment, he finally understood. Their leader planned to leave no witnesses. Tyler quietly dropped his rifle. When the leader turned away, he ran toward the emergency exit and opened it. Outside, SWAT officers immediately spotted him. Tyler raised both hands. "Don't shoot! There are explosives inside." The officers pulled him behind cover. Commander Brooks immediately questioned him. "Where?" "The gym. Remote detonator. The leader has it." Brooks looked toward Ross. "Now we move." Inside the school, Emily heard the first signs of the assault. Flashbang grenades exploded near the front entrance. SWAT had begun their rescue. The gang leader realized it immediately. He grabbed the encrypted drive. then seized Principal Hayes and two terrified children. "You!" he shouted toward the hallway. "Emily! I know you can hear me! If you don't show yourself, I'll kill them!" Emily stepped into view. Hands empty. Calm as ever. The leader smiled. "I knew you'd come." He pressed the pistol against the principal's head. "Drop your weapon!" Emily slowly raised both hands. "I don't have one." He laughed. "You've always had one." She looked directly into his eyes. "My mind." For one brief second, he looked confused. That single moment was enough. Emily kicked a nearby rolling science cart toward him. Glass beakers shattered across the floor. He instinctively looked down. Emily sprinted forward. She shoved the principal and both children behind a concrete pillar just as the leader fired 3 wild shots. The bullets struck the gym wall. Emily tackled him to the ground. The encrypted drive slid across the floor. The detonator landed several feet away. Both reached for it. Emily was faster. She kicked the detonator beneath the stage. The leader swung a knife. Emily blocked the attack using a broken chair leg. The fight became brutal. No music. No speeches. Just survival. Outside, SWAT officers stormed the gymnasium from 3 different entrances. The remaining criminals surrendered almost immediately. Only the leader kept fighting. He slammed Emily against the bleachers. She stumbled. For the first time, she looked exhausted. Memories flooded back. The failed hostage rescue. Her fallen teammates. The guilt she had carried for 6 long years. The leader smiled. "You couldn't save them." Emily looked at him quietly. "No, I couldn't." He laughed. "So what makes today different?" Emily slowly stood. "Today, I'm not alone." At that exact moment, Commander Brooks and 2 SWAT operators entered the gym. The leader spun toward them. Emily saw her chance. She closed the distance. One controlled strike disarmed him. A second swept his legs. The third locked his arm behind his back. Before he could move again, Brooks handcuffed him. The nightmare was finally over. Outside the school, parents rushed toward their children as officers escorted them to safety. Tears filled the parking lot. Teachers hugged students. Families reunited. News cameras captured every emotional moment. Emily quietly slipped away toward the medical tent. As always, she checked on everyone else's injuries before allowing anyone to examine her own. Later that afternoon, Commander Brooks handed her a small wooden box. Inside rested her old Navy SEAL combat medic insignia. "We kept it for you." Emily stared at it silently. "I don't belong there anymore." Brooks smiled. "You never stopped." Weeks later, Lincoln Elementary reopened. Children returned to freshly painted classrooms. Life slowly became normal again. Emily returned to the nurse's office carrying only a small box of medical supplies. The walls had been repaired. Broken windows replaced. The school looked exactly as it had before. A little girl knocked on the office door. "Miss Carter?" Emily smiled. "Come in." The girl handed her a folded drawing. It showed Emily standing in front of the school while children smiled safely behind her. Across the top, written in colorful crayons, were 5 simple words. "Our hero's school nurse." Emily quietly placed the drawing beside the old Navy insignia inside her desk drawer. She closed it gently. For years she had believed her last mission had ended in failure. But as laughter once again echoed through the hallways of Lincoln Elementary, she finally understood the truth. Sometimes the greatest heroes don't wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear a school nurse's badge. And sometimes, one quiet person is all it takes to save hundreds of lives.